All right, we're ready to get started. We have adjourned from our executive session, and I want to welcome you to the August 25th, 2021 regular meeting of the Governing Board. Mrs. Nye, could you please do our roll call?
Karen Monston.
Here.
Jason Olive.
Here.
Laura Bruner.
Here.
Lindsay Love.
Lindsay Love.
Here.
Joel Worth.
Joel Worth.
Here.
Thank you. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. We're going to go ahead and start off with some routine business. The first is to approve the minutes of the August 11th, 2021 regular board meeting and the August 19th, 2021 special board meeting. Could I please get a motion?
Madam President, I would like to move that we approve the minutes of the August 11th, 2021 regular board meeting and August 19th, 2021 special board meeting.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes of the two board meetings, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Lindsay, did I hear you?
Yeah, I said aye.
Okay, thank you. It's kind of hard with two voices on the phone right now. So next we have to approve and ratify payroll and accounts payable vouchers. Could I get a motion, please?
Madam President, I would like to move that we approve and ratify the payroll and accounts payable vouchers.
Second.
All those in favor of approving and ratifying payroll and accounts payable vouchers, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Motion carries. Mr. Narducci, do we have any correspondence?
Madam President, there's no correspondence at this time.
Okay, thank you. I am going to need to move up one of our action items because we have an individual here that that needs to advise us or talk with us and give us some information this evening. So we will be moving up action item 6.01, possible action relating to electronic cigarette/vaping litigation. Mr. Narducci.
Sure. Madam President, members of the board, the action item is a possible action relating to electronic cigarette vaping litigation. Discussion and possible action relating to the electronic cigarette vaping litigation is in three parts. For your discussion, A decision whether to participate in the litigation. B, the decision whether to approve legal counsel to represent Chandler Unified School District in electronic cigarette vaping litigation, and which legal counsel to approve. And the third part, C, decision whether to approve engagement agreement of legal counsel, if approved, to represent CUSD in electronic cigarette vaping litigation. The district is recommending discussion and consideration for participation. Today we have with us also Joel Sanyes, who's our legal representation with Udall Shumway, who will also guide the board and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Mr. Sanyes, would you kind of perhaps give an overview as to what this is all about?
Sure, Madam President. The district was approached by three law firms who are working together as a single representative to ask the district if it would be interested in participating in national litigation regarding electronic nicotine vaping products. The litigation is a national litigation It's a multi-district litigation that is focused in, that the jurisdiction is in the Northern District of California. There are approximately 160 other school districts nationwide who have joined the litigation. And there are also several school districts in Arizona that have joined the litigation. The purpose of the litigation is to compensate school districts for their damages and expenses, enforcing their rules that prevent electronic cigarette and vaping inside schools and near school grounds. And so the reason why the attorneys approached the district was to ask the district if the district would join that litigation. The attorneys are the law offices of Grant Woods, Keller Rohrbach, LLP, and law office of Joseph C. Tan. And the law firms have provided and proposed engagement agreement if the board were to decide to join the litigation.
Thank you. So, Mr. Olive, did you want to start off with a motion and we can have some discussion?
Yes, let's start off with Section A first. Madam President, I make a motion that we entertain a decision whether to participate in the litigation.
Second?
All right. So, and I'm assuming that the decision, your motion is to participate in the litigation.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just wanted to make that clear. Is there any discussion or comments? Maybe we should start with Mr. Worth.
Yeah, Madam President, I'm not sure we're the right place to ask this question, but I'm curious exactly how if I read the document correctly, if the group loses the election, then the district could be for some legal costs that they would have to pay. Can you explain how that works?
Sure, Member Worth. In any litigation, there's a possibility the party that brought the litigation didn't prevail, that a court could award court costs and attorney's fees against the party that did not prevail. We say that there's a possibility when it comes to attorney's fees. We don't think there's any basis for fee shifting involved in the litigation. So it's highly unlikely, as far as you can get on the scale of highly unlikely, that the district might be required to pay attorney's fees if it didn't prevail. It's also maybe a little bit further in the spectrum of likely that the district might have to pay some pro rata share of costs, which would be things like deposition expenses and subpoenas. But even that is in the range of highly unlikely. We can't rule it out as a possibility. The reason why we think it's highly unlikely is that first, the case it's anticipated in cases like this that there would be a settlement. And if there was a settlement, there would be no cost or fee shifting. The second is if the case went to a trial in the multi-district litigation and the plaintiffs didn't prevail, there's a possibility that at that point the court might award costs or attorney's fees. Again, very unlikely would award attorney's fees. But even if it did, the expenses would be shared pro rata among the 160 plus school districts that have joined the litigation. And there are also other plaintiffs, individual plaintiffs involved in the litigation. So we can't rule it out as a possibility, but we think it's highly unlikely.
Anything else, Mr. Worth?
Well, that's good.
Okay. Ms. Love, anything?
Not very much. Just I can't really hear the microphone that he is on, so I couldn't really hear the answer to Mr. Worth's question. Just a FYI, it's just not coming through very clear for the phones.
Yeah, I maybe I need to get close to the microphone. Thank you.
You can also move the microphone closer.
better.
Sure.
Sorry.
Board Member Love, what the answer was, I'll summarize it, highly unlikely that the district would incur any expenses for attorney's fees or costs. We cannot rule it out, but I think it's highly unlikely.
Okay, thank you. That was all that I had. I wanted to hear the answer to that.
Are there any other board member comments or questions?
Nothing
Olive.
that didn't get answered in executive session.
Okay. So all those in favor of participating in the litigation, please say aye.
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 The motion carries. Mr. Olive, did you have another?
Then in that case, Madam President, I would like us to do a motion to decide whether to approve legal counsel to represent Chandler Unified School District in cigarette vaping, electronic cigarette vaping litigation, and which counsel to approve. I move that we use the law firms of Keller Rohrbach, Grant Woods, and the law offices of Joseph C. Tan.
Second.
Is there any discussion or questions? I'm going to say that these are the counsel that are actually doing this lawsuit, so it's kind of a, there isn't anybody else at this point, unless we want to go off on our own. So is there any other discussion on this? If not?
No.
If not, all those in favor of approving legal counsel Keller Rohrbach, Grant Woods, and Joseph C. Tan, please say aye.
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 Thank you. And I think we have one other motion.
Okay. In that case, Madam President, I would like to move that we approve the engagement agreement of legal counsel, if approved, to represent Chandler Unified School District in electronic cigarette vaping litigation, with one change to their attorney engagement and contingency fee agreement. That would be on paragraph 9, to change the first sentence to read, subject to court rules and other applicable laws, attorneys shall have the right to withdraw from representation of the client only in the event that the district materially breaches its agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any comments on this? Questions? All right, if there's none, we will go ahead and vote. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 And the motion carries. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming out and going over all this with us and being here to answer some of our questions.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent. Thank you.
We will now go back to our citizen comments, and our Mr. Terry Locke is going to present the online citizen comments for us.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Narducci. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear okay?
No.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board,
That's better.
Superintendent Narducci. As a courtesy, we provide an opportunity for the public to submit comments to the governing board on any topic, whether or not it's on the action item for the governing board. We heard from 232 people this cycle. I'll point out that some of the feedback was submitted just prior to our last meeting, which would explain some of the timeliness and some of the comments. This week's submissions...
Madam President, you need to speak better into the microphone. Sorry.
Jerry,
Can you
can you
move
move
it-
closer to the microphone, please?
We heard from 232 people this cycle. Let me take this down too. I'll point out that some of the feedback was submitted just prior to the last meeting, which would explain some of the timeliness on some of the comments. This week's submissions are categorized in one of 4 topics. One is health and safety, mask and mitigation strategies, largely mixed opinions about mask usage. Number 2, curriculum. Number 3, transportation. And number 4, governing board communications. As you will note, feedback sometimes falls into multiple areas and will be listed under more than one category from time to time. Submitting comments electronically provides the governing board members time to read and prepare prior to the meeting. This format also provides the board an opportunity to ask clarifying questions to the administration. You have the submissions verbatim for your consideration. They're also available on the website for public review.
Thank you, Mr. Locke. We appreciate that you get those all to us. the morning, yeah, at least by the morning of the meeting, so that we do have time to review them, so thank you. And now, this is the time for the public to comment. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38431-01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to review the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. Our first individual tonight is Nicole Eidson. Could you please, take the mic by the door. And this evening, because we have over 20 comments, everyone will be limited to 1 minute. That's not what we do. Thank you, though.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. I want to say thank you to Barb, Joel, and Jason for your votes on Thursday. You've gained a little bit of trust back from the citizens. I do want to continue to talk about SLE, or whatever verbiage it is that it's being called today, that's being taught in our schools. In the Arizona Handbook, Arizona Statute 15112, prohibited courses and classes enforcement. The intro, the preamble, then it goes on to say, promote the overthrow of the United States government. Not saying you're doing that, but promote resentment. Promote resentment toward a race or class of people, are designed primarily for pupils of a particular ethnic group. Advocate ethnic solidarity instead of treatment of pupils as individuals. These are courses or classes of instruction that shall not be included in any program or any instruction in our CUSD. We are requesting you send communication out to all school teachers and families to immediately cease and desist teaching any of the above material.
Time has expired.
Thank you. Jeremy Wilson.
First, I just want to start off with thanking the board members that kept the masks as a parent choice for their children. Now it's time to fix the quarantine guidelines because they are wrong and discriminatory. If my children do not get vaccinated, they must quarantine and get a negative test in order to return to school. That's a HIPAA violation, and in fact, I will never allow anyone in my family to ever get tested for COVID again. We are slowly and voluntarily handing our rights away to the point where we need to take a stand. You will not vaccinate my children, you will not test my children, and you will never receive their test results. If they do not feel good, then they will stay home. Otherwise, they are going to school. And the teachers will teach them. Let's get all the political crap out of this. Respect parents' rights and medical privacy and get back to doing what needs to be done, and that's teaching our children and keeping them educated. The curriculum here is already lower than the schools, the charter schools. My daughter is using the Journey Readings book she used in kindergarten in 2nd grade. That's what we need to focus on.
Time
Thank
has
you.
expired.
Kurt Roars.
Hello, my name is Kurt Roars. I'm a parent in this district. Just wanted to say that parents are not your enemies, nor should they be considered a threat to the district. The mission of the district is to educate children. No one cares more about this mission than the parents of those children. The reasonable expectation that the district works cooperatively with the parents of the children you are entrusted to educate with mutual trust and appreciation. The real threats to the district are special interest groups who advocate for their specific social and political agendas in order to gain power and control over district policy and spending for their own personal gain.
30 seconds.
The recurring theme of my addresses to you over the last several years is rejection of political and social activism, which interferes with and distorts the educational process. I would urge you to welcome parents back in the schools, perhaps to volunteer to assist teachers and help close the learning loss we've experienced. I believe that this will help heal the wounds of animosity, frustration, and bitterness that have been allowed to flourish under currently highly politicized environment. That may be your best path forward.
Time
Thank
has
you.
expired.
Thank you, Mr. Roars. Sherry, is it Dirks? Is that correct, Dirks? Dukes? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Madam President, Board Member, Superintendent Narducci, my name is Sherry Dukes. My purpose in speaking to you tonight is to highlight the epidemic that is killing our young people, a counterfeit pill laced with fentanyl. This epidemic is affecting thousands of families and continues to climb. I know all too well how this feels. My son, Ethan, this kind, witty, charismatic individual, died at 16 in 2019 after taking one counterfeit pill laced with fentanyl. It has altered my life forever. Last year, 14 children ages 14 and under died from a counterfeit pill laced with fentanyl.
30 seconds.
From 2017 to 2020, the increase of fentanyl-related deaths has grown 478%. The DEA in 16 confiscated 0 pills. In 2020, they confiscated over 6 million, with 1 out of 4 of those laced with a lethal dosage. I brought you some resources tonight from Talk Now AZ. It's a campaign running from June to September. I hope that you will share these with your staff, students, and families and do it over and over again.
Time has
Thank
expired.
you.
Thank you, Sherry. Sherry, I'm sorry for your loss. That's got to be extremely difficult.
Duke, sorry for your loss. Dr. Egger, are you here? Dr. Egger, would you mind taking those resources? Thank you.
Sherry, right here. She'll take those. Thank you. Charlotte Gola.
Just because consequences are unintended does not mean they are unforeseen. CUSD implemented a 10-day quarantine for healthy students if exposed to COVID at school. Students who are vaccinated are not subject to quarantine. So right now, essentially all elementary students are. We know learning loss is real, and that keeping a child out of the classroom for 10 days does lasting harm. Pre-COVID, if your child missed 10 days in a year, you received a letter explaining the need to be there. Now, 10 days in a row is nothing.
30 seconds.
Moving on to what is essentially a vaccine mandate for our older children, we know that dividing students and denying education to certain subgroups, in this case the unvaccinated, is abhorrent. We know the consequences will be to further divide our community. And it seems to have been forgotten that diversity of thought and opinion is also diversity. And that diversity of thought is what makes for a truly exceptional learning environment. Our kids.
Time has expired. Thank you. Dane Hoff. Chandler, yes.
Good evening. I go to Perry High School and I've come to represent my fellow peers. Watching from the sidelines, I am baffled at what I'm seeing. It's incompetency. We give you billions in tax dollars, and yet I'm not seeing it coming together. These policies I'm seeing just don't make sense in the grand scheme of things. Shutting us down, putting masks on, it's stressful. It's stressful being up here. I want to represent the people that go to my school and that I talk to with. And so I ask you one thing. When have you thought about us, the people that are being impacted by these policies, right? Every decision has consequences. I understand that. And it's hard. It's a hard dichotomy. But I think we need to hear more representation and understand our perspective, young and old, because what we are missing in these years of learning is very valuable.
Thank you. James Harris, Scottsdale.
I commend the board for the 3-2 vote to not to mandate that kids have to wear masks. But now the next step is to protect against the strategies of the left who are going to try to take advantage of the mitigation strategies. Some of my friends who are part of the teacher union said that when it gets to the younger kids, they're going to start to call in their kids sick, which is going to force the other parents to prove that their children were not sick. And then if they don't get vaccinated, of course they can't because they're too young, they're going to have to be quarantined. That is a strategy that I'm told that they're going to use to begin to shut down the schools. That the goal is to go back to some form of online teaching. The goal is to cripple the rights of the parents who just want to get back to normal. These parents have rights. If that is tried here at Chandler, I suggest that the parents go ahead and open a lawsuit against the school because every child by Constitution is mandated to be able to have an education. And anything that gets...
Time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Lisa Merkel, please, we do not, I just want to remind you, we don't clap so that everyone can hear who I'm calling next.
On a daily basis, we entrust you with our most valued possessions, our children. It has become increasingly difficult to put my faith and trust in those that think they know what is best for my children. I do not co-parent with the Biden administration, CDC, Chandler Unified School District, teachers union, or board members. Along with my husband, I make all medical decisions for my family. Mandating masks and forcing a student to quarantine who is not ill is tyrannical overreach. Last year, my son, who was a sophomore in high school, had to quarantine twice, both during midterms and finals, all because he was in proximity of a student who tested positive for COVID.
30 seconds.
He was forced to miss 10 days of school, even though he was never ill. While public schools mandated masks last year, my son got to experience a sense of normalcy at a private school. Masks were not required, no social distancing, and no school closings. He got to experience what it was like to be a normal 6-year-old kid. Please stop instilling fear. Our children have suffered enough. Stop using our children as political pawns in this adult game of politics. I will never mask my kids again.
Beth Wamsley, please. Beth Wamsley, I'm sorry,
My brilliant daughter, who's a junior at Basha, perfectly explained your hypocrisy to me. See, you keep talking about equity and how equity is just giving each student what they need individually, yet you keep seeking to pass sweeping mandates for all students regardless of their own individual situations. So this is about masks and vaccines and critical race theory, but the overarching theme, sorry. The overarching theme is that you think you know what's best for my children, and you don't. I've been doing risk analysis for my kids since before they were born, and I'll be damned if I'm going to substitute your judgment for my own. Stay in your own lane. I'm glad that masks are still a choice, but I know that was a money decision, and I see no evidence that you'd recognize my right as a parent to make decisions regarding my child's health and the values with which I choose to raise them. Don't tell me that this is about science. We've seen that the vaccinated can also transmit COVID, and yet they're being treated as a privileged group. My kid missed more than a dozen days of school last year due to quarantines and wasn't sick a single day. You know what mitigation strategies would work? Normalize staying home when you're sick. No more perfect attendance awards, no more punitive makeup work policies.
Time has expired. Thank you. Andrew Wamsley.
So I have 5 children in Chandler schools, and I've seen firsthand the harmful impacts of online schools and masks and the damage that it's done to their educations. From kindergartners who hate going to school to high schoolers who struggle with higher math. I felt it was pretty shady of this board to make a decision about mask mandates and then a week later hold a virtual meeting without giving parents any opportunity to come and express their own opinions just so you could try to sneak one by us. We don't want your mask mandates. We don't want your mandates. We don't want your senseless and oppressive mitigation strategies. We don't want your woke. We don't want whatever it is you want to disguise critical race theory as, whatever the new word is this week. And we don't want whatever the next political wind brings. Stop using our children as political pawns. Let's work together and let's try to enhance their education instead of trying to hamper their education to further political desires. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next is Joyce Baker. Joyce Baker. Chandler?
I'm Joyce Baker. My husband and I chose to move to Chandler Schools in 1994. Our daughters grew up at Shumway with some of your children. Our oldest daughter was a proud graduate of Hamilton. Our other daughter and son-in-law were leaders at Basha. We've supported every override initiative during these years, confident you were good stewards, putting our children's well-being and education first. We've donated to Chandler extracurricular tax credit program since 2004.
30 seconds.
Some $5,000 to your neediest schools, Galveston and San Marcos. We're committed to Chandler, but more committed to children's health. We care about the life of every student more than any empty promise of blood money. We won't support future budget overrides and will donate to needy schools and other districts who support students' health. Please guard children's health above bribes. Reverse your mask decision.
Thank you. Walt Blackman?
Madam President, thank you, Superintendent. My name is Walt Blackman. I'm an Arizona State representative, a lawmaker representing LD6. I fought against this at the State House. I'm letting you know now, face to face, I will continue to fight against this. It's parents' rights. Stay out of their homes, stay out of their business. Let parents do what is best for their kids. And I will tell you this, if I see a bill that comes across my desk that continues to stifle parents, hurt parents, or dictate what parents do in their own homes concerning their children, I will vote no at the Arizona House and put in implementations that make parents the first choice on what they do with their kids. Not the school board, not the state, not you, nor not me, but the parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth Jones. Ruth Jones of Chandler.
All the talk that we've had in the last months about critical race theory and masking and COVID, we've lost our children. We've created a culture where our children feel that they need to judge the people around them, and they're angry. They're angry because of what's happening. They're angry because of the situation in our schools where we have divided them. My daughter started out this year in a wheelchair because of a surgery she had. She was mocked to the point where she had to do school at home because she couldn't go to school.
30 seconds.
I sent a letter regarding this to my principal. I also copied Mr. Narducci, I apologize if I mispronounced names, Mr. Gilbert, Mrs. Marshall, and Mrs. Salou. I don't know if you said that. Not one of them responded except the principal, who told me to fill out a bullying form. We need to see the culture we've created for our children, and it is time for us to start teaching them to care for each other and stop dividing them.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Jamie Vota of Chandler.
My concern tonight is over medical discrimination that is happening in our CUSD schools. What happens if my student goes in to see a nurse and says, I have a headache? COVID. Nope. She's actually dehydrated. She played soccer all weekend, or maybe she's just stressed. What if she says, I have a stomach ache? COVID. Nope, I'm anxious about a test I have today, or ate something that didn't agree with me. I have a cough or a tickle in my throat or tightness in my chest. Definitely COVID. Nope, they have asthma or allergies are flaring up right now. I have muscle aches. Nope, not COVID. She played 4 soccer games this weekend and she's tired. Maybe she pulled a hamstring. I have a stuffy nose, can't smell. Maybe she has allergies. You can see how this whole COVID is everything mentality is hurting our kids. You talk about inclusivity, but yet our kids who have medical conditions, even those that might be seasonal, are discriminated against every day in CUSD and accused of having COVID, which then robs them of access to medical attention.
Time has expired. Thank you. I will ask you to please not react to the various speakers. We will ask you to leave if you continue. Tyler Hanson.
The
Maricopa County Health Department recommends that all students within 6 feet of a COVID-19 positive student for over 15 minutes should be quarantined. Let's do a little bit of math on this. Assuming the desks are spread out 3 feet as per guidelines for the school, there will be roughly 24 students within 6 feet of another in a typical classroom. Multiply this by 6 and you have a whopping 144 students. Will the school track 144 different kids and quarantine them for 10 days per case? How does this policy work? People don't understand how devastating it is to a student to miss 10 days of school. Most think that in today's high-tech
30
age,
seconds.
students can use online programs like Google Classroom to catch up, but this is completely untrue. Teachers don't post all notes and assignments on Google, and tests can only be taken in class. I know many students who were quarantined last year, and their grades were completely ruined beyond repair after returning. Policies like this ruin futures, and as a student of Perry High School, I am telling you, this policy failed last year, and it will fail us again. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley Hannawalt of Mesa.
Okay, my name is Ashley Hannawalt, and I am a concerned parent of 3 and have family and friends here in Chandler School District. I'm currently homeschooling because of the lack of choice and options we saw last year statewide. I am here in support for the parent's choice to make any and all medical decisions for their child in regards to masks, vaccines, or any other medications, and I hope for your continued support and parent choice when considering any of my mitigation strategies. On top of that, my husband used to work at Dignity Health Chandler, and we know what proper PPE is, and these masks are not proper PPE. Proper PPE
30
has to be
seconds.
fitted to your face properly, and what we're wearing is not that, so you're not safe from any viruses. On top of that, we need to think about the mental health and well-being of people, because especially our youth, because they're committing suicide at alarming rates. My husband's aunt died of suicide because of these restrictions, and I'm really sad over it because I know like 5 people that have committed suicide just because of all these restrictions, and I will be thinking about people's mental health.
Ashley, I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you for your comments this evening. Amanda Monte, I can't read the writing, I'm sorry. Could you, thank you, of Phoenix.
Hi, I'm Amanda Montejano. I have 4 kids in the Kyrene School District. I came here today to offer my support to any of these parents who feel like their rights are being infringed on. I'm here to say that I wanted to come and put my kids in this school district, but I don't, you guys, you're unsafe. I don't trust you. My kids feel like they have to come to school and they're either defying me or they're defying you. You guys are dividing this community, completely dividing this community. My kids can't be friends with some of the friends that they had before because our mask options are different or because of the way we feel. It's ridiculous. You guys are the new racists. Thank you.
Andrew Tulberg of Queen Creek.
Why am I here? No, seriously, why am I here? Have you entitled elitist megalomaniacs with narcissistic tendencies figured it out yet? Judging by what I have witnessed over the course of the last year and this year, you have no clue what you are doing. You therefore would not understand why a parent is standing in front of you who would normally never attend one of these meetings. Well, shame on me. Everybody knows my name. That's right. I messed up. I should have been here at every meeting prior to this one. That way I could have at least attempted to mitigate the damage you have wreaked upon this school district, the damage that has no basis in reality. Now you want to start the quarantine measures? Are you paying attention? The parents and the students aren't happy with your governance of any of this. You're behaving like petulant little brats who didn't get their way with the mask at the emergency meeting and the other night. Is this how you attempt to claw back your control and flex your power over us rebellious serfs who children attend your schools in your district? Now it's your turn to feel the shame. The whole lot of you needs to be replaced, removed, and relinquished of duty yesterday. Believe me, I will work very hard to make your time limited. I'm awake now. I don't know if you gathered this by your powers of limited deduction yet, but I don't play well with bullies who target my children for their own selfish means. Sleep on that, you petty little tyrants.
Melanie Rettler. Queen Creek.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Melanie Rettler. I'm a veterinarian. I'm from Queen Creek,
And I want to say the lady over here that talked about accurate PPE, this is a document here from our continuing education that we have to do every year. It's titled USDA Gov PPE. Face masks provide adequate protection against airborne contaminants. I answered no or false. They said I was correct. The only
30 seconds.
You have to have a fitted respirator, but those don't protect you at all. Another thing is, CDC contacted me. I'm a cloning expert, and a few years ago, they contacted me, asked me for my treatment for a viral disease. When I told them, then they told me what I was using, one of the treatments, which was dexamethasone, they told me it was contraindicated. The CDC doesn't know their
Time
ass.
has expired. Thank you. Denise Torres. Chandler.
My son Emilio is special needs, and his classmates are being subjected to reoccurring trauma. Daily, my son sees someone he cares about getting hurt or gets hurt himself. Daily, the class is being moved to a safe room so they can all be safe. Daily, 10 kids are not receiving anything close to the required SDI, not to mention their FAPE. This is because there's a child in his class with violent outbursts that includes hitting, kicking, screaming, and throwing of anything that's not tied down. Emilio is nonverbal, but he cannot even
30 seconds.
take his talking device with him during the day as it has become a projectile. My son cannot tell me about his daily trauma, which he is without a doubt experiencing. When is someone going to do something to protect these children and their rights? I know you have received calls and emails from many of us asking for help quickly. Instead, there's just more data collecting. This is serious negligence to our most fragile students.
Thank you. John Baker of Chandler.
My name is John Baker. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I just want to state a couple obvious things. One is if someone you know gets COVID, it messes with your head. If COVID takes someone you know, it breaks your heart. Now, masks can help. They're not going to solve everything. We've got kids that can't get vaccinated even if they want to. And I'm asking you please to require kids to wear masks in school. I have two granddaughters, not school here, but they got COVID within about 2 weeks of being at school where the other kids were not wearing masks. So please reverse your mask position. Keep our children safe, keep them healthy, keep them alive.
Thank you. Priscilla, I don't have a last name here. Priscilla? Of Tempe. Okay.
Hi. Yes. I am a parent of a child in Kyrene District and Chandler, and I wanted to address the mental health aspect of this mask debate. And I'm a little emotional, so sorry, but the children are not happy and they're hurting and they need help. And every day we don't help them, they suffer deeper trauma. Mental health is a switch, and once you turn it off, the child may not have the opportunity to turn it back on. This will result in a lifelong of medication and therapy if they're lucky, if they don't kill themselves. Who's accountable then? Please hear that this is not about politics. This is us parents telling you our children are battling emotional stress and trauma that there is no vaccine for. We're terrified we won't be able to help them recover. I'm aware about the COVID facts and remind you, you are not responsible for my son's health. I'm accountable, not you, so let me take the responsibility of making my own parenting choices. In my culture, the American culture, we trust our God-given natural immunity, and we won't be manipulated in believing that this so-called science is superior.
Time has expired. Thank you. Next is Brad Potter.
Before you start the clock, don't give me a 30-second notice. I just want you to listen to what I'm saying rather than paying attention to the clock. Okay? You can shut the mic off when I'm done. Fair?
Thank you.
Facts versus fiction and decision making. The use of the PCR test will be ending December 31st, 2021. That's what we utilize to determine who has COVID. This is being done in order to give hospitals the tools to better differentiate between flu and cold. This bears the question, if the PCR test does not work and is being replaced, how do we know if anyone ever has had COVID-19? The PCR test and vendor, Carrie Mullis, is quoted in saying, "This test in itself is not a diagnosis." 3, you cannot test positive on a PCR test, you can test positive on a PCR test and have antibodies associated with the common cold per the CDC. What this means is almost every sick person that takes the PCR test will get a positive result for COVID-19. To even further prove the PCR test is a scam to create fear, the African president from Tanzania sent a COVID.
Time has expired. Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you. Kathy Zinkhorn. Kathy Zinkhorn, there you are, of Chandler.
Go get a blue card. Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, interim superintendent Narducci, and the community members. My name is Kathy Zinkon, and I'm a proud 11-year public school educator. This is my second year in CUSD, and I'm a pre-K SPED teacher at Shumway. The reason why I'm speaking tonight is in regards to the agenda item 6.02, and is to applaud the proposal of the raised wages for CUSD's classified support staffs. They are vital in keeping our schools running smoothly. I'm also here to advocate for my certified gen ed pre-K colleagues. For many years, they have been amazing certified pre-K teachers, have been paid a lesser salary than all other certified teachers in the district. It is time to change that. Gen ed pre-K teachers teach full days, 5 days a week. They do not get a prep time at all during their days. They teach classes of up to 20 pre-K students. They are required to participate in all initiatives that the district mandates, but they only receive half the compensation for things like pay performance and et cetera.
Time has expired. Thank you. Appreciate your comments. That is our last individual for citizen comments this evening. And we will move on to our consent agenda, and that will be presented by Mr. Narducci.
Madam President, members of the board, tonight's consent agenda includes out-of-state student travel pre-planning, out-of-state field trip pre-planning forms for Camille Castile High School and Perry High School are provided. Following governing board pre-approval, the superintendent designee, which is Dr. Gilbert, will monitor trip arrangements before providing final approval. The governing board will receive a summary of final travel arrangements quarterly. Monetary gifts. We request approval of all monetary gifts generously donated by the Chandler Schools, to the Chandler Schools by our community, totaling $28,719.37. Under donations, we request approval of the items generously donated to Chandler Unified Schools totaling $3,131.37. Under updating contact information with the Arizona Department of Education, the Arizona Department of Education requires board approval to update entity and profile contact information. We request approval to update the phone number to the Chandler Unified School District main number, which is 480-812-7000, and the fax to 480-224-9353, and that's just a requirement. Policy revisions. These policies have been reviewed. Arizona School Boards Association, ASBA, recommended changes to the following policies. DIE, audits and financial monitoring. House Bill 2018 pertaining to audits and financial records prescribes a requirement for school district governing boards or charter school governing bodies to publicly accept all audits and compliance questionnaires by roll call vote. The language is added to ARS 15-914 and policy DIE. EEA bus driver requirements, training and responsibilities. House Bill 2159 amended ARS 28-3228 relating to bus driver licenses for school bus driver applicants. It's requiring school bus driver applicants to possess a commercial driver's license issued by the Department of Public Safety or an acceptable alternative as described in the statute. Chandler School District recommends adopting the policies as proposed by ASBA. These changes were presented as information at the August 11th board meeting, and we request approval. Under 5.06, intergovernmental agreement with Arizona Career and Technical Education, or CTE Curriculum Consortium for the 21-22 school year. The Arizona CTE Curriculum Consortium intergovernmental agreement for CTE teacher resources, instructional materials, and professional development. The board approved the initial intergovernmental agreement, or the IGA, in June of 2013. The IGA was renewed and signed by both CUSD and Pima JTED in November of 2016 and again in August of 2020. Through our participation, CUSD will receive quality professional development for our CTE teaching staff to enhance teaching and learning, as well as access to the online electronic library of consortium materials. This is required as to the CTE Curriculum Connection. The CTE Curriculum Connection contains over 1,000 common designed lessons to over 19 CTE programs that Chandler Unified School District has. The cost to CUSD associated with the program membership and maintenance and ongoing development is projected not to exceed $18,397.50. Career and technical education funding will be utilized to fund CUSD participation. Attached is IGA and AZCTA Curriculum Consortium 2020-2021, all signatures included with Exhibit A. Exhibit B does not apply to CUSD, so it has been left blank. 5.07, 2021-2022 hiring contract with Everybody Matters. The contract between Chandler Unified School District and Everybody Matters for the 2021-2022 school year is presented for approval. This contract allows for the hiring of 14 social workers, interns, at a discounted rate to assist with student needs at school sites. This agency is on a cooperative contract that follows all procurement guidelines and allows CUSD to use this vendor. The contract has been reviewed by Dr. Nance in our Human Resources Department, and we're recommending approval. Under 5.08, Human Resources, we're recommending the following: employment separation and compensation and COVID-19 leave agreements.
Well, thank you, Mr. Narducci. Could I please get a motion?
Madam President, I would like to move that we adopt the consent agenda as presented by Mr. Narducci.
Second.
All those in favor of approving our consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Aye. Joel? I guess we lost Joel, and I say aye also.
Aye.
Oh, there he goes. Okay. The motion carries. Next, we will go on to our 6.02 support staff wage increase. Dr. Nance.
Madam President, members of the board, we're requesting a market adjustment to the support staff wages for the 2021-22 school year. This request would include an additional $1 per hour to each support staff hourly position and $1,500 to be given to each support staff exempt position. This funding would cover the additional raise to meet the minimum wage requirements that will be implemented in January 2022. It will increase the marketability of our hard-to-fill positions and allow CUSD to remain competitive and attract from a shared applicant pool with all of our East Valley districts. And above all, we want to retain our current employees. The cost to the district would be approximately $4 million. The funds would be allocated through the traditional funding sources of those positions, including maintenance and operations, grant funds, and our cash fund accounts. We would like to recommend approval and adjustments to be made effective September 2nd, 2021.
Thank you, Mrs. Nance.
Madam President, I move that we approve the marketing adjustments as noted in the agenda item.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Let's go ahead. Are there any questions for Dr. Nance?
I have a couple questions.
Yes, Ms. Love.
So I just wanted to ask, like, how feasible would it be to increase by $2? I got a few questions about that from a bunch of staff via email.
Thank you, Ms. Love. The cost to raise it by $2 would be $8 million. That would be a budgetary discussion with not only our governing board, but Alana Berry, who's not here tonight. Those typically take place in the spring. We felt like there was a need right now with our vacancies that we wanted to move on this quickly if possible. But I will say, and I think others would agree, that our support staff do have some needs, and we feel like this would be a start, but there definitely is growth in their area and compensation that still needs to be addressed.
Correct, Dr. Nance. And also I can add, Ms. Love, as we look at our budgets and as we look at gap funding and other funds that are coming to the district, where we're going to be working with those funds to be able to provide this now, as we need to attract and attain. And placing this into the salary schedule does carry this every year. So it's going to be that $4 million that we carry every year from here. So we have to be really prudent in ensuring that, that our resources are used wisely. But this also doesn't preclude at the end of the year for us to look at that market and being able to work with our teams and looking at, are we providing a fair wage for our employees? Also significantly in here, and I know you asked, is we have to meet cost of living raises that are sent to us by the federal government. And so, minimum wage requirements. And so we're absorbing that, plus trying to get our salary rates up, and also keeping employees to where they're not crossing over on other individuals. So if we do this $1 now, we can look at other adjustments later on in the year.
Thank you. And then 2 more questions, and I'll turn it over. And I don't think I'm violating anything, but it was addressed in the citizen comments, but it was in relation to this. Is there room to look at gen ed pre-K salaries and get more information on that as well at a later date?
I will ask Dr. Nance to look into that with Dr. Marshall and Dr. Edgar, who are both in attendance, and we will always continue to review any market adjustments that we need to do.
Okay. And then my last question is, we're talking about like attracting and retaining employees, right? And a lot of the referrals that we get come from people who are happy to work in the district. But I'm just wondering if there's room for us to improve on like the staff morale and things that we can do along with this salary adjustment or wage increase to help improve the morale and keep people working for us and believing that Chandler Unified is the best place to work. I talked to a lot of staff who were really feeling like let down, especially after last week. And I'm just wondering like what our plan is to, in addition with the wage increase.
Ms. Love, we did gather, and we are going through the data currently on our recent survey. Some of the questions asked, what support would you need, along with the concerns. We're getting a lot of good ideas on suggestions that they feel would help them in their positions and where they're impacted. So we'll be bringing those back to the team to not only identify action items, but we'll be sharing them back with the governing board as well.
And Mrs. Love, as an organization, we always have an opportunity to improve. So I would say that that we would look at that seriously in the data that's been given to us by our staff as well.
Thank you, Dr. Nance and Mr. Nardici.
Thank you. Mr. Olive, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I didn't have any.
Mrs. Bruner?
Yes, thank you. So kind of to piggyback on what Ms. Love was sharing, I know we've talked before about some other options besides salary. So for example, if someone's under 30 hours, giving them 30 or more hours for healthcare, and possibly performance incentives or other issues. Have any of those been seriously considered? And also, do we have questionnaires that we use for classified staff and or certified staff for retention, like why people stay, and also exit interviews when people leave? Like, are we getting the data of where they're going, for what purposes, and what we can do to prevent that?
I'm going to try and answer most of those if I forget any. The exit surveys, we make it as part of their release. So we have them that they can complete, and then we gather that information back. We also have tracking where they're leaving us, if they're moving out of state, if they're leaving for another profession, if they're unhappy. So we have that information that we collect on everybody who leaves us. As long as they fill out the survey, I mean, we hand it to them, and they either meet with their supervisor or we have an online if they prefer that to be more comfortable.
So is that getting linked to strategies for retaining and?
Yes. Okay. Yes, we pull back, and in fact, an example was an employee this week, and so the feedback that I get, I also share back with the departments and supervisors. So we have some follow-up on some of the concerns that were shared. As far as addressing the hours, those are some accommodations we've been working on, especially with our areas that were community ed, food services that had the shorter hours. So we've been linking them with other positions, and food services was also able to extend their hours just to make it more worth their time, and they can get their hours up where the benefits could be included. We've also been working with schools to, kind of lump our paras with a crossing guard or a noon aide to extend those hours so that we can get them to that benefit stage.
And I think this all points to having a great system in place for employee groups to address like non-compensatory issues, that I've mentioned before. I think we have a system in place for things related to funding, and I think it'd be great to have a system in place for certified and classified folks for all the things not related to funding that might meet their needs and increase our retention. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bruner.
Also, if I can add, Dr. Nance, real quick, one of the top concerns, definitely, and I've been listening and talking with staff members, is the wage. And when you can work at a fast food restaurant, any local one, and make $15 to $17 for unskilled labor, and then you're coming into a district where you're being offered a position for $12.60. There's just some point where there's a livable wage for our employees. And with the situation that we're in and have been in the last year, it's even more questionable whether people want to work part-time in schools, and it's been hard to attract those individuals. But we feel that if we can focus on building in that livable wage for our employees, that was the number one thing that they had said would show that they were respected. And I do agree that it's time to be able to make sure that we budget and we make sure that it's built in our budget, those opportunities for us to not only attract, but to value and retain our staff, because they are great.
And I 100% agree. I'm just saying that's a necessary piece, and then let's do everything we can. Right? Yeah. Thank you.
Agree.
So I also have a couple of questions. So obviously, some of this is being funded through grant funding, and some of it is being through our cash accounts for basically community ed and food service. But is this still sustainable when the grant funding goes away, and are the cash funds able to independently sustain this with what they receive in those cash funds?
Sure. The grant funding that we're currently talking about there, some of our paras and paraprofessionals and clerks are paid for out of our special ed or federal funding. In addition, so those are there, and we always look at the allocations. We sat down with Ms. Berry, and we, processed this out multiple years to make sure it would be sustainable and a recommendation that we could comfortably bring to the board, as well as look at further additions in the future.
Okay. So what will that bring our minimum wage to?
So minimum.
Minimum.
Yeah. I believe it's going to be 1315.
Okay, 1315, thank you. And do we have any plans to, I know you were talking about how we can start looking at this in the future. I know there's Frank mentioned that there was a cost of living that is added each year from Arizona to get up to a certain point. Actually, I don't think that there is a maximum to that, where once it hits a certain dollar amount that they don't do that anymore. But are we going to try to, as a district, be able to, I guess, overall raise our lowest wages so that they are livable wages, to bring, I mean, I know the big thing was for a while a $15 an hour type livable wage. And do we have any, shall we say, goals or aspirations to be able to achieve that in the not too distant future?
I would say our aspiration is 100% to increase the wage. Our support staff were manning the lines in person. They were the ones serving food to our kids. They were the ones managing the in-person daycares, custodians, cleaning, our drivers and maintenance, putting our facilities, our technology support. So, I mean, there's many that I'm not mentioning, but we know we want to get up higher. I will tell you, my own son took a part-time job, college, and he started at $15 an hour. And when I have paraprofessionals that we're entrusting our students with in the classroom, I feel like it's worth more than we're able to give them right now. So we definitely are putting action plans in place so that we can bring sustainable plans to the board and increase those wages.
Thank you. And I guess this is kind of maybe an odd question, but I know that we have been working with a consultant with our salary ranges and our the amount that we're paying our individuals. How does this whole thing fit into what we've been discussing with the consultant? Does this disrupt everything and he has to start over, or what?
It actually doesn't, because the move we're making tonight attaches itself to the whole range.
Okay.
So our ranges that were vertically aligned will stay in place, vertical alignment. If you recall, we didn't really focus on the majority of our support staff, the salary band. That was looked at 3 years ago. So a lot has changed in the market value recently. So we felt like vertically keeping that sustainable so it all stays appropriately placed. And now that we go in and look at certain positions and that minimum wage on where does the increase need to be to get our lower level ranges higher.
Great.
I was just going to say, there's a competitive market for our support staff, and everybody's feeling it. I mean, even though our community businesses are paying what they're paying, they're still having a hard time attracting people. You know, we attract individuals that really have a passion for working with students, some that possibly even want to become a teacher and are coming to our district to grow their own and possibly go through. And so we have to look at what values our individuals are coming to our district for. Our retention rate's pretty good. It's just, it's people have lots of choices now. And so we want to keep with that. What I'd like to say is this is a beginning, this is a start. And what we need to do then is build that in and be very systemic as to how we build over time. Because whatever we put in is built into the budget. And if we have budget shortfall, or if anything happens to the budget where we have to reduce the budget, it's going to impact everything we do. So
correct.
Just want to make sure we build cautiously, but it's time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Are there any more comments or questions?
I just have one logistical question. So to clarify for all those staff that are impacted, this starts on a Thursday? So
our payroll, it's a pay period, starts on a Thursday.
Okay.
So we'll start fresh with a pay period with the new ranges.
Thank you.
Yes, Madam President, I do have some comments.
Yes, Mr. Worth.
Okay, I'm very supportive, obviously, of this market adjustment. And yes, many of the things that are being discussed, we certainly can afford to do that, especially since the majority of the board protected the $40 to $60 million we would have lost. So I appreciate the other board members being interested in that, and we now have the resources to go down that road. So thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other comments, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor of approving the recommended adjustments to the support staff hourly and exempt positions effective on September 2nd, 2021, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Now we will move on to our information items, and we have a number of policy changes that are coming to us as information items, and I believe that we will start with Mr. Narducci.
Madam President, members of the board, I have a few here under school board governance and operation policy revisions. The first one is BDF advisory committees. This policy is amended to make it clear that if a board creates an advisory committee or directs that the committee be created or appoints members to a committee, and that the committee has the authority to act for the board or make recommendation to the board, the committee is covered as an advisory committee or subcommittee of the public body under the open meeting law. Under BEDD, Rules of Order, this change makes it clear that the governing board president has the authority to recess a meeting without a vote of the governing board to maintain decorum and governing board meeting rules of order. BEDH, public participation at board meetings. This policy is amended to prohibit unsolicited commercial messages during a call to the public. And then also BIB, Board Member Development Opportunities and Regulation, BIB-R. House Bill 2906 has added statute ARS 41-1494, which states in part that a political subdivision, including school districts, charter schools, may not expend public monies for board members for training, orientation, or therapy that presents any form of blame or judgment on the basis of race, ethnicity, or sex. This does not preclude any training on sexual harassment. Blame or judgment on the basis of race, ethnicity, or sex is defined in the statute by 7 concepts which are listed in the regulation. Just making sure I have all those. And then Chandler School District recommends adopting the policies as proposed by ASBA, or Arizona School Boards Association. These changes are presented as information only, and approval will be requested at the September 8th, 2021 board meeting. Regulations and exhibits do not require board approval.
Thank you, Mr. Narducci. Do any of our board members have any questions or comments about these proposed changes? Just to let the public know, the Arizona School Boards Association does provide a service each year, or all the time actually, so that when various legislation is approved by our state legislature, they have their legal counsel go through all of those new laws and rules and regulations and identify which policy they belong to and make those recommendations based on the new revised statutes that have been approved by the legislature. This saves all districts in the entire state all of the expenses and legal expenses in order to have those policies revised. So we really do rely on them for to match the statutes and the new laws that our legislature provides us with each year. So our next.
I do have some questions.
Oh,
actually.
Yes, Ms. Love.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think I unmuted right when you were talking. I didn't want to interrupt. But I do have some questions and comments about policy revision BIB. And I did review with Nikki Whaley from the Arizona School Board Association, who does a lot of the equity work. And there are a few things that, I just wanted to kind of clarify and ask questions about. So a few things this law is really the result of people not understanding what equity trainings do, just kind of due to the media. And so my question would be, because we have had a lot of people who have conflated critical race theory with equity, and that's not the work set of equity, right? My question would be, since the Arizona School Board Association and all of their affiliates, which would be the CUBE conference as well, are not associated with critical race theory and do not teach on those principles of anybody being better or less because of race, class, gender, right? What would that look like in terms of school board members wanting to go on trainings, like the equity conference that comes up next year, or next year when the CUBE conference comes up?
Ms. Love, thank you for your question there. I would say as long as the conference meets the 7 concepts, which have been clearly this is in alignment with the state statute that has been provided and it has just come out, which will be enacted September 29th. I would say as long as it's in alignment with those 7 concepts, then we have no problem with the approval of that. This is just expending district money. So if a board member wanted to attend a conference, they can definitely do that on their own. This recommendation and this item, it just clearly states that board members would be in alignment with what we're expecting of staff and in the statute. So again, there's options there that they meet the 7 criteria concepts, and it can be attended. We just have to make sure that it meets those 7 criteria concepts, or it could be done by the individual. And that's
okay. What I don't want to see is that our board leans away from equity and equity trainings. And I know that our board, it's 5 members that you have to coordinate different schedules. And, I know Mrs. Bruner is also like an educator, right? So some of these conferences occur when she's in the classroom or when I'm at work or, when Mr. Olive is at work or what have you. But, I do want to see our board attend some of the equity conferences. I know Mrs. Marsden and I have both been and lean into this work. We do have an upcoming equity conference next year, and I just don't want our board members to be discouraged. So that's all I'll say about that one.
And thank you.
Ms. Love, and, I was also thinking here that, if an organization in Arizona is going to be marketing to school board members, I would also think that they bear some responsibility to be following these statutes also. Otherwise, they are not going to be getting school board members to be attending any of these trainings. So now I would imagine that out-of-state type conferences or training or whatever, out-of-state may not have those same self-interests, shall we say, for the conference attendees, but certainly in Arizona, they won't be getting anybody attending if they don't follow these rules. So,
well, and I would challenge that too, because the National School Boards Association, they are big on equity work and actually look to Arizona because of how advanced Arizona is with their equity work, right? And so I've never been to a equity conference with the ASBA or seen anything coming out of the National School Board Association that would not fit within this current law. Like, I have never seen anything coming out teaching guilt and shame because of the color of your skin or sex. I have seen, people talking about disparities, right? But those aren't really just the call of like the School Board Association. That's the call of No Child Left Behind, which really define that educational equity. And so a lot of the things that we do out of state that's associated with the National School Board Association really do fit in alignment with this current policy and law.
well, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments?
I had a question regarding BEDH. Is there a definition that we could get for what exactly unsolicited commercial messages means. I'm just curious, like, what the parameters are on that?
Sure, Mrs. Bruner. The commercial would be commercial evidence. We can get a definition from ASBA on that and just get a clarification for you prior to the next meeting. But my intent of reading the review that ASBA did would be somebody coming to a public meeting to sell or to come into a board meeting under that premise, and that would be looking at commercial representations versus the business of the board. And so that's done a different way through procurement pieces. And so we just want to make sure that people aren't taking that platform to come to board meetings to basically have your attention for something that may be voted on or something that may, which would also be illegal for us to do as well, intentionally or unintentionally.
Right.
But right now, there's no policy that prevents that.
I could see it being read as, if someone is using it for free publicity, that's a commercial benefit. And so then I could see it like going like this. And I'm just curious what exactly the parameters are legally on this.
It's the difference between public interest and commercial interest. And so we can get more definition for you that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to our next, our human resource policy revisions. Dr. Nance.
Madam President, members of the board, Arizona School Boards Association has recommended changes to the following policies. GCB, professional staff contracts and compensation, and GDB, support staff. House Bill 2268 added the statutes related to ARS 15189 for charter schools and ARS 15341, 45 for public schools, requiring the school district to provide each employee a total compensation statement categorized by benefit or payment that includes specific categories. GCF, professional staff hiring, and GDF, support staff hiring, per House Bill 2023, before employing a certificated or non-certificated person, school districts and charter schools are required to conduct the search of the educator information system that is maintained by the Arizona Department of Education on prospective employees. School districts and charter schools are prohibited from employing in a position that require a valid fingerprint clearance card, either a certificated person whose certificate has been suspended, surrendered, or revoked and not subsequently reinstated, on a non-certificated person who has been prohibited from employment at a school district or charter school. The additions to policies GCF and GDF are included in the newly enacted ARS 15505. We have GCH, Professional Support Staff Orientation and Training. House Bill 2906 has added statute ARS 41-1494, which states in part that a political subdivision, including school districts and charter schools, may not require an employee to engage in and shall not use public monies for training, orientation, or therapy that presents any form of blame or judgment on the basis of race, ethnicity, or sex. This does not preclude any training on sexual harassment. We have IHA, Basic Instructional Program, and IHAE. We have SB 1572, changed ARS 15 to 11, and moved the deadline by which a district must have at least one kindergarten through third grade teacher in each school who has received training to dyslexia. There was no change in this policy. They just extended the date by a year, so the new date included is July 1, 2022. We have policy IMB, teaching about controversial sensitive issues. House Bill 2989 added ARS 15717.02, which states that a teacher, administrator, or other employee of a district, charter school, or state agency who is involved with students and teachers in grades preschool through 12 may not use public monies for instruction that presents any form of blame or judgment on the basis of race, ethnicity, or sex. This language is added to policy IMG. Chandler School District recommends adopting the policies as proposed by ASBA. These changes are presented as information, and approval will be requested at the next board meeting, which is September 8th. Exhibits do not require board approval.
Thank you, Dr. Nance. Are there any questions or comments about this grouping of new policies or policy changes?
I do.
Yes, Ms. Love.
All right. And so with regard to IMB, I think I want to get clarification because I think that there's been a lot that's been said around teaching controversial topics. And I think that gets conflated with the teaching of ethnic studies, which is already precedent in the state of Arizona for us to be able to do that. And so I'm wondering, Dr. Nance, if you can describe the differences between this policy and what it is asking, and the ability for teachers to do something like teach an ethnic studies class or an African American history class or Chicano studies class, because that's a question that I'm getting from teachers, and I feel like we're not being clear that these things can still happen in the district because there's laws to protect them.
Thank you, Ms. Love. I don't know that I have all the specifics on your African study, but I will tell you we have communicated out with teachers, and Human Resources is working closely with curriculum and instruction about this new law and statute. So as we've communicated out with teachers, we've asked them and shared with them that they are to be teaching the state standards as expected. If information is presented, it's presented in a neutral view. We are making and have asked them to make parents aware of upcoming items in the classroom. So if there's any concerns or questions, that there's transparency and clarity for parents and students to ask questions even prior to that instruction happening. I know our curriculum and instruction department is working closely, especially with our ELA and social studies departments on their own content, and have been answering questions from teachers, helping them navigate to ensure that we are meeting all standards.
I just, I think it would be good. So, was somebody saying something? Sorry.
Yeah, Madam President.
Joel, I think Lindsay is still asking her questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think it would be good to just kind of get some like legal opinion on that as well. Just because and I know Dr. Nancy, you're not an attorney, right?
Correct.
But I think that we need some clarification for our staff, because I have had staff come to me and say hey, I have this really great idea, to present this course option for next fall, but I don't know what the state of that is because it's so ambiguous with this policy. So, that's just kind of my statement on that in terms of we should be getting a legal opinion so that way our teachers know what are the rules and boundaries. And this law does not prohibit the discussion of things like race or racism, right? So what I would hate is for a teacher to be teaching a lesson on Tulsa or something like that, and feeling scared that a mob of parents are going to come after them and threaten to sue them for teaching accurate history or teaching a cultural topic. So that would just kind of be my recommendation. And I think too. That was my only comment right there. But yeah, I don't want this to curb equity work within the district, I think, is what the premise of what I'm saying. I don't want it to stifle our teachers in being creative and presenting topics that are important. Thank you.
Ms. Love, if I could add, this is Dr. Gilbert. One of the things that our curriculum instruction department is doing, as Dr. Nance has said, is really working with our teachers to understand what the legislation has declared that needs to happen in the classroom. With that being said, there has been guidance that has come from the EDE as well in order to help our teachers in regards to how they're teaching. The other thing I would note in regards to new classes or classes being taught, we have a process within the district that we look at all new classes and the content that would go with that classes that's reviewed. Dr. Edgar has done an excellent job with the team in really revamping how we are looking at content as well as the courses that are being offered. Within that, each teacher has the opportunity to work with their site if they're looking for a new class, what that entails, what is the content, how it meets the standards that we have set out by the district as well as the state as we look at it. We will always look to seek guidance, whether it's from the administrative team that we have at the district level as well as our legal counsel as we move forward. But ultimately, when we are looking at this, it will be us looking at the legislation that is connected to it.
Yeah, and I get that too, but I don't, because there's been so much misunderstanding about this law and what it is doing. And I think that people will find out that this law does not prohibit us from doing the things that they think equity is, about, right? Like, we know that equity is not CRT. Like, that is just way inaccurate and overblown at this point, right? And, what I would hate is for an individual decision to be made at the site level because they don't understand what this policy is saying. And so that's all I'm kind of expressing right here.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Love. This is Frank. I just want to...
Madam President, can I speak?
Just 1 second. I just want to respond to Ms. Love as well. And again, it clearly states in statute, and thank you for sharing that, Ms. Love, that it's the 7 concepts. I think our community hopefully does understand that American history is what American history is, and standards are going to be taught, and teachers can talk about American history. We don't erase history. We go back and we learn from it and we move forward. I'm hoping, as well as what you said, that our population understands that and understands that the 7 concepts really have to do a little bit more with putting one group above the other, and we can do a better job of making sure that our standards are taught and historical events are taught. And I don't think the statute came about to distort that's a reality, that our teachers will have conversations regarding periods of our history, some periods of our history that help us move forward and we can learn from. And I also don't think our parents are expecting to stop their students from thinking and possibly conversing about things that they don't understand. I just think it's the 7 standards that we look at and concepts that we will be looking at when we develop classes. And when we look at those, it gives us a guideline as to what we approve, as to also how we become in alignment. So I thank you for the comments there that even in equity work, those 7 statutes would be looked at, or those 7 standards in the statute would be looked at. And there's a lot that we do in that work that doesn't meet that, and that it goes above and beyond of just connecting kids to learning, and that all students get the opportunities within that. So thank you.
So, Mr. Worth, your turn.
Finally. I guess when I look at IBM, the policy, when it talks about form of blame or judgment, there's going to be 100 different interpretations of it. It's just a dangerous situation, I think, for teachers in the school district. I guess what I'd like to recommend is you get an attorney general opinion as to exactly what form of blame and judgment means. So then you have some guidance to meet the law. The State Department of Education, that's not law, whereas the Attorney General would be law. So I'd suggest you get that opinion, because it's going to be wide open for interpretation.
Thank you, Mr. Worth. Dr. Nance, I do have a question concerning, let's see, GDB, the first one, about the total compensation statement. Aren't we already doing this for our employees, for every one of our employees?
We actually are. It just has never been included in policy. So currently we do place our compensation packet online, total package for our employees. We are making adjustments just with this now going in formally into policy, that we advertise and have them sign off on the compensation. We usually include it where they can get their tax forms, W-2s.
Okay.
So they can access that there. But we feel like maybe we could improve in the communication of where it's located, as well as this is just formally putting it in. But Chandler did make that adjustment a couple of years ago.
Okay, and so do we have to add or subtract anything from our current forms or whatever to actually meet the statute? Do we have to make those type of adjustments, or are we
We do not.
completely in compliance that way? Okay, great. Are there any other questions? All right, we will now move on to our instructional program policy revisions. Dr. Gilbert.
Madam President, members of the board, Arizona School Boards Association has recommended changes to the following policy. IC, which is school year, House Bill 2862 consists of extensive amending of statutes 15801, 15901, and 151021. It is repealing section 15861 and the addition of a new statute 15901.08. It is focusing on school instruction time. The primary directives are included in policy IC, which is school year, with emphasis on districts referring to more specific information, which is included in ARS 15901. What does that talk about? Instructional time and the ability for the district to be able to look at how they're constituting instructional time and different models that can be used in the structure. IHAMD, which is instruction and training in suicide prevention. School district governing boards and charter school governing bodies that issue identification cards to students in grades 9 through 12 shall include on each new identification card at least one of the items described in ARS 15160 that are now included in policy IHAMD. This language should be adopted by districts that issue identification cards to students in grades 9 through 12, which looks at adding information in regards to suicide hotlines, text mess areas where they can go and find help and seek help, put it on their cards. We also have it on our junior high cards as well. IJ, instructional resource and materials, and IJJ, which is textbook supplementary materials selected and adoption. Policy IJ and IJJ have been updated with additional language from ARS 15721 and ARS 15722 regarding the definition of textbook. As more districts move away from using physical copies of textbooks in favor of electronic options, the language clarifies that textbooks includes printed instructional materials and digital content. We recommend adopting of these policies as proposed by SBA. These changes are presented as information and approval will be requested at the September 8th, 2021 board meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Do we have any questions or comments from the board about our instructional program policy revisions?
I actually.
Go ahead, Mrs. Bruner.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Olive.
I actually did have one. Having the identification cards contain one of the 12 items described in ARS 15-160. What do we know what those are?
Yes, on policy IHAMD, it's either a telephone number for a national suicide prevention line or a telephone number for a national network of local crisis centers, a statement describing how to access a text-based emotional support services, a telephone number for a local suicide prevention hotline. It's those type of things to be on identification cards.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Bruner.
And then my question was regarding IC. So is this going to make it more or less difficult to count time as instructional time?
I think it will make it easier to count time. And I had to think best way to say it. It's going to be easier based on the structure that you establish as for instructional models that you would have in the district.
Because I know junior high is kind of tight, right, with instructional minutes especially. Is that true?
Junior high has the most minutes that needs to be collected, but for us as a district, we've always been solid within our time. Right. About 2 years ago, there was some time change in regards to instructional time where now lunchtime and conference could be included where before it couldn't, assemblies could be included before it couldn't. So that has helped in regards to addressing instructional time. This is really focused on having different instructional models within your district of what you're using in collecting time. And it gives a little more flexibility, but there's some work that the district would need to do to really look at what those particular models would be and how that structure is set up.
So would that mean something like an academic lab or something along those lines, or something totally?
It's actually, it's more wide open than that.
Okay.
It could be remote learning. It could be looking at weekends and things in the evening and how you would include that as an instructional time and how you would count it. So it really gives you some flexibility to look at how you might manage some type of hybrid, things of that nature, looking at project-based learning, those type of things. So it really opens it up a little more of what you can do and looking at with some of the things that we've had in the past, or over the past year, I should say, whether it be in remote learning. Because it's separate than your online instruction. It's a little different.
If I could add, Dr. Gilbert did a very nice job of explaining it as well. One of the future-ready gears that we're working on right now is space and time. And so what this allows is us to look at some creative models of being able to know that students sometimes engage with learning at different times and within different spaces. And we've always been boxed in this traditional seat time within a classroom. And so this adds that component that some of our students learn differently and at different rates and at different times, and gives us the flexibility to call that instructional time.
Because as soon as I saw this, I was like, oh, wow, this opens up a lot for CTE and like hands-on experiences and, service learning and all kinds of things. So I think that's wonderful. Thank you.
Ms. Love or Mr. Worth, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions at this time for this one.
Mr. Worth? Okay.
Sorry, I did not.
Okay. No questions?
No questions.
Okay. Dr. Gilbert, I do have one question for you. Our ID cards already have a hotline or some other contact information on them, so we don't need to make any adjustments to our current practices. Is that correct? Okay, great. Thank you.
That's correct.
Next, we have student policy revisions. Mr. Schluter.
That would be me. Madam President, members of the board, Arizona School Boards Association has recommended changes to the following policies. Policy IKERB, dealing with the promotion and retention of students. Senate Bill 1572, signed by the governor on July 9th, 2021, added language regarding the promotion of students from the 3rd grade. It adds a time frame for when the district shall provide written notification of the pupil's reading deficiency to the parent or guardian, and it adds more information to what that notification must include. That time frame is 3 weeks within when the student is identified, and that additional information has to do with the frequency with which we update parents. We're already in compliance with that with our move on when reading letters, and they fall in line within the 3-week window from when we present at conferences and when they're screened. Policy JFAA, admission of resident students, and exhibits JFAA-EA, JFAA-EB, as well as policy JFAB, dealing with the tuition and admission of non-resident students, and exhibits JFAB-EA and JFAB-EB. Senate Bill 1420, signed by the governor on March 5th, 2021, requires state or any political subdivision of the state, including school districts and charter schools, to accept a consular identification card that is issued by a foreign government as a valid form of identification if the foreign government uses biometric identity verification techniques in issuing the consular identification card. Biometric identification techniques include fingerprint identification and retina scans. The policies and related exhibits included the necessary language for schools. And finally, policy JFB, dealing with open enrollment. House Bill 2898, signed by the governor on June 30th, 2021, made substantive changes to ARS 15-816.01 pertaining to open enrollment. The required information is included in policy JFB to clarify the statutory requirements set forth for open enrollment programs. Chandler School District recommends adopting the policies as proposed by ASBA. These changes are provided as information, and approval will be requested at the September 8th, 2021 board meeting. Regulations and exhibits do not require board approval.
Thank you. Are there any questions on these policies or comments from the board?
Madam President, I have one.
Yes, Mr. Worth.
Can you define what the changes are in the open enrollment policy?
Yes, I was anticipating that, Mr. Worth. Thank you. The substantive changes include the addition of language that stipulates that we must post a school's capacity and the status of accepting the acceptance of open enrollments by grade level and/or specialized program. That would be posted on each school's website and would have to be updated every 12 weeks. We are currently working with Jeff LeBenz on identifying what that format would look like on our website. And then, of course, what the approval process and the process for updating that would look like. That would go into effect September 29th. Essentially, this law would have to go into effect September 29th. It also adds the formal addition of a waiting list at each of our schools. Many of our schools already keep waiting lists, but it's more formalizing the process of maintaining a waiting list for students who are not accepted by open enrollment due to capacity. And finally, it does revise the transportation limit from 20 miles to 30 miles for those students who may be eligible for transportation who are receiving IEP services. However, capacity still would have to be, because capacity of those services would still have to be considered as part of that approval.
Does that mean that you can go outside of the district boundaries?
Well, I don't know if we're going to go outside the district boundaries. I don't foresee that happening, Mr. Worth. I don't think we do that currently. It just adds that addition of 20 to 30 miles. So.
Okay, thank you.
I would have leaned on Lana, but I don't see her here right yet, so she may be able to clarify that further.
Mr. Worth, if I can add on to Mr. Sleeter's comments there. So what it really does is helps our parents to see where we have capacity, but it also helps us to serve individuals a little better. If they'll call us and if they see a capacity, we don't want them just to say, oh, they're not accepting second graders at such and such school, but it'll give us the opportunity to work with them to see what other matches we can make for them. And so when a parent sees the capacity at a school, we don't want them just to stop there. Give us a call and we'll see where we can assist them. Whether it's outside or inside for open enrollments, we've always noticed in our data that we have about an equal balance for those that choose out and those that choose in. And so that balances out as well. So those open enrollments are balanced out between both groups. And we found that over the years, it's almost about an equal number. So, our market share is important to us. We want people to choose Chandler. And as we move forward, we'll assist those open enrollments. It's just making it a little bit more public as to where our capacity measures are for programs and for individuals' grade levels at school sites. So those will be posted on the websites of each school. And Mr. Schlueter, how often do we have to update that?
They're updated every 12 weeks. I just would note, too, the format we're looking at is while each school will have their own school's chart that posts the capacity, there will also be a link to a district page so that if you're not finding the capacity at the school you're looking, you're going to be able to see all of the district schools and where that status is for all schools. It gives us an opportunity so we can capture parents' interest, not just at their school, but perhaps looking at other schools in the district as well.
I had a quick question about
Mr.
capacity. Are we going with like the SFB capacity, or are we going with capacity depending on how many teachers we have and what our ratios are?
That's a good question. We are actually basing capacity on the certified teachers that we have based on our ratio that as opposed to the SFB capacity, which means how many kids we can actually cram into a school. So. And that may be open to change as we add additional teachers over time, which would change as we, in the 12 weeks that we update both the capacity and the status.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, we will move on to the student discipline policy revisions. Mr. Rother.
Madam President, members of the governing board, the Arizona School Boards Association, ASBA, has recommended changes to the following policies: JK, student discipline. Language regarding district regulation of off-campus student speech is added to policy JK in response to the recent Supreme Court decision in Mahanoy Area School District versus BL 594 US 2021, and Tinker versus Des Moines School District 393 US 503 1969. The court ruled that districts may regulate on-campus speech that materially disrupts classwork or involves substantial disorder or invasion of the rights of others. In Mahanoy, the court writes that district regulator interest remains significant in some off-campus circumstances. Districts should confer with their attorney for guidance when questions arise about specific situations. And we have been doing that. We have been meeting with our attorneys for some guidance when we've had those situations arise, even prior to this policy. JKD, student suspensions, and JKE, expulsion of students. The policy advisory for the 3 policies listed are based on changes to statute contained in House Bill 2123 pertaining to suspension and expulsion of students in kindergarten and grades 1 through 4. Chandler School District recommends adopting the policies as proposed by ASBA. These changes are presented as information and approval will be requested at the September 8th, 2021 board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Rother. Are there any questions or comments from the board on any of these policy changes?
On JKD, does that include if the district chooses to do in-school suspension?
These are, so normally the suspension would be in school or out-of-school suspensions on those. It doesn't mean that we can't provide additional or supplementary consequences. But normally when we talk about suspensions, we'd be taking students out of their normal academic classroom.
So that's what I'm asking. It includes, so there's no in-school suspension now for K through 4.
So as long as you provide instruction, then it wouldn't necessarily be an in-school suspension. Okay. And normally we don't often do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Madam President, I guess I'm confused with the 2 items that have no verbiage behind them. Why is that? Why don't we have some explanation by each one of those?
So, Mr. Worth, if they're actually pretty much the same verbiage. So, listed in the policy, one just pertains to suspension and the other pertains to expulsion, and it's pretty lengthy in regards to the criteria that now the state has set for suspending students in grades K through 4. And so that's all outlined in the policy. Essentially, multiple criteria have to be met. One, a student has to be 7+ years of age. There is specific infraction criteria that's outlined. And then also, if a student, by removing a student, you prevent a safety risk to other students, is also outlined in there. The district needs to investigate other behavioral interventions prior to the suspension or expulsion of a student in grades K through 4 over the age of 7, and then also outlines readmission procedures within the policy as well. So those are identical for JKD and JKE.
Mr.
It would have been
Worth?
nice to add some, I'm sorry.
Mr. Worth, there is a link in the bottom, near the bottom of the agenda item that has all of the complete policies that will be highlighted in, on my computer, it's green, all of the changes that are being made.
But it'd be nice if there was just a little summary, just like there was in the other items.
That's noted.
Are there any other questions? I do have one, Mr. Rother, on student, oh gosh, it's section, the policy talks about a readmission procedure for the K through 4 students based on whether it's suspension or expulsion and when they can appeal. And it doesn't really identify who they are appealing to. Where is that located in our policies then?
Yeah, so we have an appeals process that we go through when we do a long-term suspension over that 10 days where students have due process because those are appealable suspensions. And so that process is outlined where students have a hearing and they're able to be afforded their due process to appeal those suspensions.
And basically the parents, there are certain time periods in which the parents can appeal that suspension or expulsion and through the proper mechanisms, but it doesn't mean necessarily that they can appeal that day, and it will be heard or a decision made on that. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, because these seem to be very, I don't know, a little bit misleading when you read them initially, that it almost sounds like, oh, well, you can appeal, it halfway through or whatever, and, you can, it's almost implying that, that an appeal can be granted at that point in time rather than just the appeal process being started.
Correct, yeah. The appeal process would be started, and there is a time frame that we implement that process. It isn't an immediate, where it's not an injunction necessarily.
Right.
For the suspension still goes through. We just have those 10 days to be able to hear and give the parents due process.
Okay.
Madam President,
Yes.
important to note on this one, and Mr. Rother and Mr. Schluter and Mr. Gilbert can add to this, is appealable suspensions are 10 days or more. Our principals, if they have a suspension on their campus, what the K-4 statute is saying to us is that we are going to try every way to connect that student to learning before a suspension occurs. It does not state that a suspension may not occur. It just states that we're going to make every effort to assist the child and to try other strategies on campus before the suspension is enacted. And it involves the parent in that conversation so that there's a whole approach between school, parent, and the principal, the administrator of the school, to come up with that. Now, at any time, if a principal is doing an investigation per se on a student, they may adjust the suspension based on information that they get. So it may be additional information. So anything under the 10 days is handled at the school sites. Our appeal process comes in from 10 days and more into long-term suspensions. And is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, Mr. Narducci, I would just say that there are some other, as you read that policy, it clearly defines what aggravating circumstances may be, as well as weapons and/or drug use that may override some of the extra steps that need to be carried out if those are present in the infraction.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, we will move on to our board agenda roadmap. And our next meeting will be September 8th. And that is actually the beginning of one of the law conferences for the Arizona School Boards Association. And I think then we will have a meeting on September 22nd, and then starts break, I believe, right after that. So Mr. Narducci, do you have any comments?
Sure, just on the roadmap, we will be bringing a resolution for ACP, Arizona College Prep High School, and Dr. DeFred Dupree Stadium. So we'll be bringing that resolution to the board, and then as well as looking over the metrics on September 22nd. We'll be discussing that before, but reviewing those metrics with Dr. Jennifer Fletcher, our new executive director for assessment, and she'll be guiding us through that process as well. On updates, I'd like to congratulate 16 of our students. We're recognized as Capstone Scholars. 11 students earned the AP Capstone Diploma, and another 5 earned the AP AP Seminar and Certificate for 2021. And the AP Capstone Diploma helps students to develop critical thinking, research collaboration, and presentation skills that are critical to academic success. To receive the capstone, our students must earn scores of 3 or higher on the AP Seminar, AP Research, and on 4 additional AP exams. We're proud of their efforts, and it takes a lot of work to do that, especially to score across the board that way while they're doing everything else. And so we're really excited about that opportunity that they have. I'd also like to congratulate 5 students who were selected as 2020-21 Phoenix Chapter Scholar Athletes. These are students that have put in the time on the field, but also are doing academic excellence within their classrooms. They were selected based on grades, community service, and a high level of athletic skill. Desmond Holton of Castile, Dylan Hunter of Chandler, Dawson Hubbard of Hamilton, Dravian Hathaway of Basha, and CJ Snowden were honored this year. Just a reminder to our community that we value input for how we spend our funding received from the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief, which is ESSER 3. Grants are administered through the Arizona Department of Education. These emergency relief funds are allocated to school districts to address the impacts of COVID on learning and also unfinished learning. On August 30th from 6 to 7, that's August 30th from 6 to 7 p.m., CUSD will be hosting a virtual community roundtable to gather input and to guide our ESSER 3 plan. During the roundtable, members of our community will have the opportunity to review the CUSD priorities and provide feedback. If you need the link, please contact our community relations office or call our main desk and we'll get you that link. I believe we have about 700 parents that have already, individuals that have already requested to join that, so we're really excited about that. Finally, the fall high school sports season is here. Arizona College Prep opens early with a home football game against Tucson Unified School District Sabino at 7 p.m. Friday. If anybody wants to check out the stadium and a new campus on Gilbert Road, I know you drive by it, and we'd like to welcome you to it. Just south of Ocotillo, the student athletes enjoy the support. Our other 5 teams open the season at home on September 3rd. And I just would like to inform our public, we've gotten a lot of feedback, and CUSD will be hosting no-cost COVID-19 testing. Dr. Lindsay Hartley and our team on mitigation strategies have looked over the feedback, and these are no-cost free results in 15 minutes available for all students, teachers, and families. This testing will be held at Chandler Unified School District Student Services Buildings, which is at 200 South Hamilton Street in Chandler here, starting as early as this Friday, August 27th. The testing dates and times are going to be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, noon to 3. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. What will happen here is they're able to provide the rapid antigen tests as well as the PCR testing will be available. The results for the antigen test will be 15 minutes, and the results for the PCR testing may take 24 to 48 hours. But we wanted to provide that opportunity for our community. We know there's a lot of community resources, but we thought a familiar place within our district where we've held this before would be appropriate for our community, and that'll be consistent. Don't worry about getting everything I just said down, because we're going to be sending out a notification to all of our families. If they need that for any reason, we welcome them to that location and trying to make that accessible for them. As far as vaccinations, we know that's an individual choice of parents, and there's a lot of community resources available right now, and so we don't want to duplicate services that are not in our community. So we're still looking into that to have it available as a consistent practice here. But we have been told by most health agencies that there is plenty of availability of vaccine within the community as well. So we're continuing to look at best ways to serve our students in our community, and this is one of them with the no-cost testing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Narducci. Do we have any board member comments? I think I'll start with the phone people. Mr. Worth, do you have any comments for this evening?
I do. I guess I was a bit surprised that the board, the current board, didn't have any basically input on the mitigation and quarantine rules and procedures. And I know that there's a lot of varying methods being used around in the other districts. And I think we should have some input on that, and maybe the administration can bring some different options to us for the next meeting.
Could you talk with Mr. Narducci about exactly what you had in mind at maybe tomorrow or the next day before our next meeting?
Well, yeah, I will.
Okay,
but
thank you.
He can just contact the districts surrounding us because there are different rules and procedures out there.
Thank you. Ms. Love?
I'm not sure I don't have a, trust me, I don't have a answer as the correct one, but I'm a little surprised we didn't have any input.
I will get with you, Mr. Worth, based on the requirements are and from Maricopa County Public Health. So I'll be able to get with you to let you know the notification that we have received from them and the orders that they gave us to stop.
I believe those are just recommendations, correct?
Yeah. No, we've been told they were requirements. So I'll get with you on that, and then we'll look at how we move forward with that in future meetings.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Love?
I didn't have anything tonight. Thank you.
Ms. Bruner? Mr. Olive?
I was going to ask a question. When are there any plans to bring back the folks from the high school campuses that give the presentations on their what's going on their campuses?
Thank you for asking that, because we are missing our students, which is great. We are having our student body presidents come in, and I got the opportunity to speak with them last week. Very exciting group and a very professional group, and they're excited to tell what's going on at their schools. They will come out first to introduce their student body representatives. We'll make sure that we're distanced outside, and they'll come in through here and do that, and then leave based on the fact that that they probably have homework to do and things that they need to attend to. And then our student body presidents will, after we've introduced each group, our student body presidents then will make their presentation starting in late December and going into the rest of the year.
All right, thanks.
If there's no other comments, I want to thank you for joining our meeting this evening. I appreciate all of the individuals that came and made their citizens' comments, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Have a great evening. This meeting's adjourned.